if you want to capture yourself with a drone when skiing, there is only one good option that really makes sense: the HOVERAir X1 Pro or PROMAX. Today I'll explain why that is, show you what the footage looks like, and how you can achieve optimal results with the X1 Pro Max when skiing. As you may know, I often film myself skiing with different cameras, and I've used the X1 Pro Max quite a bit for this purpose. That's why I'm happy that HOVERAir has agreed to sponsor this video. However, even the X1 Pro Max has its limits. And to prevent you from being disappointed, I'll also tell you what you need to pay attention to so that the drone can actually follow you when skiing. As you can imagine, following a skier is no easy task. The cold and above all the altitude pose major challenges for any drone. And it is precisely in this context that the X1 Pro and Pro Max have advantages over other drones on the market. The DJI Flip, Neo or Neo 2 might be alternatives for a follow drone. But when it comes to follow shots for skiing, HOVERAir drones have clear advantages. And this is because for the Neo and the Neo 2 in particular, the maximum takeoff altitude is specified as 2000 meters. And that is often not enough. The maximum takeoff altitude of the X1 Pro Max is 5500 meters, and I think that should be enough for most people. High altitudes are a problem for many drones, because the air is thinner, so less dense, and propellers struggle to find enough air to push against, making it harder to generate sufficient lift. I don't know what it's like in other ski resorts, but here in the Alps, a significant portion of the slopes are above 2000 meters. The mountain stations of most lifts are well above 2000 meters. In addition to the significantly higher maximum takeoff altitude, the X1 Pro Max has another advantage. It can be quickly and easily folded up and stored in the pocket of a ski jacket. You don't need a backpack and can simply carry the drone in your jacket pocket. But there is another difficulty to consider when skiing: the cold. It has become extremely cold here in the last few days. Currently, daytime temperatures are around -10 degrees Celsius, which is about 14 degrees Fahrenheit. And that can be a problem for the batteries. If you want to use a drone in these conditions, you need a so-called thermo battery, which allows for very low temperatures. Otherwise, you risk a crash or an emergency landing. And of the drones mentioned, only the X1 Pro and Pro Max have thermo batteries available. They are also included in the so-called ski bundle and allow temperatures down to -20 degrees Celsius or -4 degrees Fahrenheit. We'll take a closer look at the ski bundle for the X1 Pro Max a little later. But first, I want to show you an accessory that makes a huge difference for me when skiing: the beacon. The beacon is basically an extremely small portable remote control with a display. And the beacon is the best accessory you can get for a drone for skiing. I'll show you why that is. As soon as you turn on the beacon, you can connect it to the drone. Once you've linked it for the first time, it will connect automatically and relatively quickly in the future. This means there is no need for a cumbersome connection to a smartphone. You can see the camera preview image on the small display. This is perfectly adequate for follow shots when skiing. Of course, you can also control the drone manually. You can do this with the two buttons at the bottom, or you can connect the beacon to these joysticks and use your smartphone as a display. But I wouldn't do that when skiing. You want to launch the drone quickly and pack it away again quickly after landing. If you tap on the icon on the left, you can select the flight mode. And as you can see, the X1 Pro Max has its own ski mode. This is important because when skiing, you move completely differently than when running or biking. That's why it's important that the drone is prepared for these movement patterns. In addition, there is a steep incline, and the snow is also a very special surface. In ski mode, not only do the flight characteristics adapt to these special conditions, but so does the camera to produce a beautiful high contrast image. If you swipe up from the bottom, you can adjust various settings for the ski mode. For example, you can change the follow distance from normal to far, which will cause the drone to follow you from a greater distance. Instead of flat shot, you can set the follow height to high, so that the drone follows you from a greater height. And under follow sensitivity, you can choose between low and high. High would mean that the drone also reacts to minor movements and adjusts its flight accordingly. Distance, altitude and follow sensitivity are the most important settings for the ski mode. For optimal results, I would set the distance to normal. If you set it too far and ski too fast, the drone will lose you relatively quickly. I'll show you how to prevent this in a moment. For altitude, I would always recommend high. One of the major difficulties with follow shots when skiing is that the slope of the terrain is constantly changing. A slope can be steep and then suddenly become flat again, and so on. If the drone is in a rapid descent and the slope then becomes flat, this can quickly lead to a crash. This happened to me last year and I learned from it. That's why I always set the follow altitude to high. I would also always set the follow sensitivity to low for normal skiing. If you set it too high, the drone will try to follow every little movement, which will not lead to ideal results. If you have activated Copilot at the top here, you can still manually adjust the position of the drone during flight, so while the ski follow mode is active. You can change the altitude or distance, or even the lateral angle. This can be useful for finding the optimal shooting angle. Smart Ascent can also be very useful. This is a feature that was developed specifically for skiing. When I fly the X1 Pro Max, I always try to do so on an empty slope. I don't want to endanger other people with the drone, nor do I want to disturb others while skiing. Of course, this would work best if you ski off-piste. But apart from the fact that this can be dangerous, my skis aren't really made for that. They are narrow racing skis that aren't meant for deep snow. If there are other skiers on the slope while you are filming, it would be great if the drone would automatically ascend to avoid a collision. And that's exactly what Smart Ascent does. And I would always recommend that you activate this feature. This is a friend's son. And yes, he enjoys skiing into my shot. I often had friends with me who could land the drone in case tracking was interrupted. Of course, it's ideal if you have someone skiing behind the drone, because what you definitely want to avoid when skiing is the drone losing track of you. Then it will simply stop and hover in place. And you don't want to be forced to climb back up the slope on skis. If you don't have any friends with you who can collect the drone in such a case, then you should definitely use the beacon. The beacon has a few extremely useful features that are designed to prevent tracking from being interrupted and you having to search for the drone on foot. In the ski mode settings, you will find the HoverLink Assistant Follow feature. If it is activated and the drone is following you in ski mode and you are skiing too fast, which unfortunately happens to me all too often, the beacon will alert you with a beep signal. The beep sound means that the X1 is having difficulty following you and that you should slow down. The X1 Pro Max has a maximum tracking speed of 42 km per hour. The speed can be increased to up to 60 km per hour for a short time. But as you can imagine, these values refer to optimal conditions. And as already explained, an altitude of more than 2000 meters is not easy for a drone to handle. The X1 Pro Max does a good job, but you shouldn't expect to be able to race down the slope at maximum speed and have the drone follow you. That won't work. I mean, even an average skier like me can reach speeds of more than 100 km per hour when skiing. And on my first few runs with the X1 Pro Max, I was definitely going too fast. I wanted to produce spectacular videos after all. In such cases, the beacon quickly alerts you that you are going too fast. But not only that, it also has another extremely useful feature. In addition to the usual return to home function, which is of relatively little use when skiing, it also has a return to beacon function. And this does exactly what you would expect. The drone flies directly to the position of the beacon, meaning that as soon as you notice that the drone has aborted tracking, you can activate return to beacon and the drone will fly towards you. This has saved me quite a few strenuous walks. If that doesn't work, for example because the drone is too far away, you can also use the two lower buttons to take manual control of the drone and fly it to you manually. Incidentally, the maximum range between the beacon and the drone is 1 kilometer, which would be more than enough in most cases. And best of all, there is also a wrist strap for the beacon, which means you can attach the beacon to your wrist and still have control of the drone while skiing, hear the warning signal better and see whether tracking is working via the image. And the beacon can also record sound during your rides. I think you have understood. The beacon is the best accessory for skiing and you should definitely have it with you when using the ski mode. On the right, you can also adjust the camera settings. And if you swipe from the right to the left, you can adjust all settings manually. We have now looked at the most important features of the ski mode and the beacon. But if you want to enjoy skiing with the X1 Pro and Pro Max for a long time, there are a few more things you should know. Earlier I said that I set the follow sensitivity to low to avoid unnecessary movements of the drone. I noticed that smaller turns often work better than large, long turns when skiing, as the drone eventually has difficulty following you. You should only set the sensitivity to high if you are following a ski trail and not making the typical skiing movements. For various reasons, the drone may sooner or later fly into the snow or simply land in the snow. As I said, this can happen, for example, if you have set the follow height to flat and the gradient of the slope changes quickly, or if you don't check the battery level before takeoff and then make a longer flight. Then the battery will run out and the drone will land in the snow. That has also happened to me. Or if you slow down too quickly and come to an abrupt stop. Then the drone will fly past you, which has also led to a crash in the snow for me. But you shouldn't worry too much about that. You can find the drone relatively quickly using the Find Hover feature. To do this, scan the QR code on the beacon with your smartphone and the position of the drone will be displayed on your smartphone. I have also noticed that the X1 Pro Max is quite robust. The drone has ventilation openings on the side. Of course, if it lands in the snow could get in and damage the drone. To prevent this, you should attach these stickers to the sides in winter. They are designed to prevent snow from getting in. Incidentally, this damage here was not caused when skiing, but when biking. And as you can see, I've attached an ND filter to the camera. ND filters are relatively important when skiing, as it can be extremely bright. And for a natural look, you want to reduce the shutter speed to create some motion blur. The ski bundle includes a set of 4 ND filters. The strongest is ND64. And with that, we've seen almost everything that's included in the ski bundle. The ski bundle includes 2 additional thermal batteries, a charging hub, the beacon along with the joysticks of course, an adapter for the beacon, and a high quality carry bag, which I really like. But also this power case, which we haven't seen yet. After the descent, you can put the drone in the power case and it will charge the drone while you're on the lift. At the same time, this keeps the battery warm, and when you reach the top, you can immediately start a new flight. Everything is perfectly thought out. So how much do the X1 Pro and Pro Max cost? The X1 Pro costs $500. The X1 Pro Max costs $700. The difference lies mainly in the camera. Only the X1 Pro Max can shoot in 8K or 4K 120 for example. I used only the X1 Pro Max for this video. Both come with the ski mode and are compatible with the beacon. The ski bundle we saw today is currently on sale and costs an additional $600. Yes, it's not cheap overall, but of course that also applies to skiing as a sport. Links to the X1 Pro and Pro Max and the ski bundle can be found in the description below. Write me in the comments if you have any questions and give me a like as feedback if you found the video interesting. There will be more videos on the X1 Pro and Pro Max, so stay tuned and see you next time.